All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome
Morning.
to our live stream webinar today. Voices from the Field Unlocking the Expertise of Security Installers and Technicians. My name is Nikki Williams. I am the North American Marketing Manager here at ICT, and I am really quite excited about this panel discussion. I think it's a little bit different. I think it shines a light on a different perspective we don't get to hear a lot about in the security industry. So today we're going to have our panel of experienced installation professionals really kind of talk about real world case studies, practical tips, best practices, and just discuss how we as an industry across roles can collaborate better in general to ensure our systems really drive those real world results. So, a few housekeeping items before we jump in. This webinar is designed to be a fireside chat, a panel discussion. So, I invite you to ask questions throughout this presentation. Helping me today is the very talented Kelly Ann here from ICT. She is our events and marketing manager in North America, and she will be watching your chats and make sure any questions you have get answered. So please don't hesitate, get curious, ask questions. Everybody here is more than happy to help. And with that, I am pleased to introduce our panelists, our industry experts today. First, I've got James Prado, the lead security technician at Firetrol Protection Systems. Thank you for joining us today, James.
Thank you for having me and selecting me for this.
Of course. And Cade Wheeler, a security installation advisor over at Guardian Security Solutions. Welcome, Cade, this morning.
Thank you.
And then Metzger, a systems integrator over at Hamilton Safe Products. Thank you so much for coming, Mike.
Thank you.
Great. Well, with that, let's jump right in. So, I'll start with my favorite part as a marketer, of course, is the story. I want to hear the stories. So, Kate, I'm going to put you on the spot to begin.
Okay.
Let's start with a conversation about installations in schools. Can you tell us a story of an installation you did with a school? Any pain points you addressed? What did they need? I'll let you go ahead and start.
It kind of varies from school to school, and then every other type of installation we do, from jails to courthouses to banks. But schools in general are pretty straightforward. But the way each specific school needs to be configured is different. So, for instance,
Mhm.
like elementary school, they don't need many door schedules. They usually just have one or two doors that are operating on a schedule, and everything else is card only. But then it gets more advanced, of course, whenever you go to a middle school or a junior high where they have different class passing periods, things like that. But each school is different. And so, I mean, you always have your wild things, like you might have bats in the ceiling whenever you're pulling cable, or
What?
raccoons and things like that. I mean, it's just kind of, you gotta be aware of what you're doing and be ready for those surprises, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Have you ever run into any other specific kind of snags along the way or any unique challenges to schools otherwise?
Not necessarily. Of course, like the construction, new construction of schools, you're always having to coordinate with the GC and the architects, and they might miss something on a door, and there's always things like that. But schools in general are pretty straightforward. Where it gets really complicated for us is like the historical courthouses, where you're
Hmm.
working on a door that the customer needs for it to look like it's still 100 years old, but they need it to be outfitted with new equipment.
Oh gosh, okay. That is interesting. How do you do that then?
You just have to be very careful and think outside of the box. And and that's where it comes in handy, having people in different backgrounds, like construction backgrounds, framing backgrounds, electrical backgrounds. Any type of insight you can have helps out a ton during situations like that.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And then for everybody, kind of across the board, I guess, is there any kind of tips for a more like foolproof installation across vertical markets? Like some best practices as you're going in, just knowing that you have to be a little bit flexible.
I
Do you
would
know?
say great site surveys, not being
Mm,
afraid to punch up into the ceiling with your head or move a ceiling tile or get up into the attic so you can see what you've got. It that makes a big difference in planning.
okay. So a larger portion of kind of a successful installation at times is a more detailed, thorough plan going in, you think?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah,
James
I
Cade,
completely agree with that.
yeah, I mean, all best plans, right? What do you think, James?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having experience too, knowing what you're gonna do is probably key. Another key factor, just that experience factor.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes sense. And Mike, let's shift gears from kind of education and general verticals. I wanted to ask you more specifically about bank installations. When you get in there for an installation, are there any common pain points or challenges specific to an install for a bank?
The biggest ones we see are smaller ones that we have used like an old house and they've remodeled an old house
Oh,
to fit a bank into.
oh,
And
goodness.
now your wire paths and everything have become a huge challenge. So especially if they are not re-drywalling, tearing out like the old plaster or re-drywalling. When you get in the historic banks that are 100 plus years old
Oh,
with
wow.
horsehair plaster ceilings and everything, it, as Cade pointed out before, and so did James, you got to really think outside the box in a lot of situations. You got to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C starting out because you may try to get down a wall and you run into blocking or something that's preventing you, and then you have to have a second plan.
Okay, that makes sense. And then how do you guys communicate that with, say, the end user? Are there a lot of flexibilities when it comes to these installs, or is it common that there'll be very strict deadlines in banking, or I guess what is the flexibility? Like, are people open to plan A, B, and C?
Well, you got to do the best you can. Sometimes you've got an existing facility and you're literally taking down a system. On something like that, if they want to add on, we'll either pre-wire for the add-ons or
Oh,
do a replacement of the existing system and then do the add-ons after the existing system has been upgraded. We try to keep a minimum downtime to allow
hmm.
maximum security.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then James, shifting over to hospitals. Can you tell me a story about your past hospital installations or any kind of common installation challenges along the way? What have you seen in hospitals?
Well, as everyone knows, or most everyone that who's been in a hospital knows, biggest challenge is permitting and like above ceiling
Oh,
work and working with infection control, trying
hmm,
to minimize the spread of anything. So certain parts of the hospital can pose challenges where you have to get into containment units. You'll
hmm,
have to use HEPA air filtering to clean the air that's coming out from the ceiling before it enters the normal patient care space. Um, we do a lot of work here in South Texas at a children's hospital, and we have, a huge access control system with probably close to 600 doors on there already.
oh,
So
wow.
we're all over the place on that. I mean, from offices, billing offices, HR office to like the ICUs, trying to protect those kids and keep people out with the access control. So biggest challenges is most of the time is just, trying to be work as clean as you can, and be not try to spread infection, and the
Mm,
containment and infection prevention. That's a big one, big challenge in hospitals for sure.
that makes sense. Are there any specific roadblocks that come up otherwise in hospitals, common installation challenges or kind of any tips from your experience you could recommend to avoid when doing a hospital installation?
Well, I'd have to bounce back to what Kate said earlier, right? Planning,
Yeah.
and even Mike too, planning it out, talking to all parties involved, getting everybody, having meetings, and just communicate, right? Communication is
Mm,
key. You communicate with everybody involved, it'll go a whole lot smoother, and get that communication started in the beginning before you even start the project or start installations, because then you'll be able to overcome hurdles, and everybody gets to work together, and it's smooth transitions for the installation process. So biggest thing is communication. Just talk to people, and it doesn't hurt to send an email or text message or even a phone call.
never hurts to over communicate.
Absolutely. Follow up an email, with per our conversation. We're doing XYZ.
Yes.
Yeah,
Confirm, confirm, confirm.
absolutely.
Cade, Mike, is that align with you too? It's just kind of open communication or in general.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and taking notes, and if you have change orders, things like that, that everybody's involved with keeping track of them. But and then just your communication back and forth with the techs on site if you're not there, just to know that they have everything that they need and that they're not going to be stranded and ran out of cable or things like that, you know.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then overall, how do you guys feel just in regards to the evolving role of installation professionals in general? How do you feel your role really influences the long-term reliability and usability of a system? Trying to get a picture view of the success of a project and how dependent it is on the experience of the technician or installer.
Well, installing the equipment correctly and labeling all your wire, making sure all your connections are correct. Um, that's that's phase one, of course, but then just paying attention to detail and testing what you've installed, and then going over it with the customer at the end while you're doing programming to make sure they know what's going on, that they're comfortable with using the system. And usually after that, you're good to go for the most part, you know, but just a lot of attention to detail.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Definitely. Installation is key. A system is only as good as it was installed. So
Yeah.
get it right from the beginning, and you won't have problems later on down the road. Labeling. Labeling is a big one, especially when you take over a
Oh,
system. Label all your wires from what was there, especially if you're not pulling new wire, you know.
Hmm.
Just don't cut wires all across, and I'll tone it out in the end. No, that takes too much time. Just get it right on
Yeah.
the first try.
I like that. I like that. All right. Well, interesting question for you guys next. Wondering if any of you would be comfortable sharing kind of a moment in an installation, like an oh no moment during one of your installations, something that didn't go according to plan and kind of what you learned from that moment. Does anybody want to share that?
I think we've
Yeah,
all
I
done
got.
it. We've all had them. Unless you're not in the industry, right? I mean, accidentally frying panels is not a good thing. Sometimes you let the gray smoke out and you can't put it back in,
Oh no. Oh, that's awful. But what did you learn, right? It's a great learning opportunity.
for sure. It just costs a little bit of money, hopefully minimal money at that.
What about,
I have a pretty bad one that comes to mind. So I was actually training a guy years ago and showing him how to drill into the top of a storefront. And I was being like, "Hey, you got to be very careful. Like, make your measurements, measure twice. Like going over all this." And he said something and I looked down and my drill bit went through the top of the storefront and shattered their storefront window
Oh no, Cade.
as I was training a guy. And I was
Oh,
like, oh my gosh, like I'm like, oh no, this is not good. And then so I had to get into construction mode and board everything up and call out a glass company, and it was very humbling, you know.
yeah, I bet. Again, though, all lessons learned along the installation process, and you didn't get here as the experienced installation professionals you are without a few bumps along the way, right? And
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
just the opportunity to learn and grow. I
Absolutely,
like that.
for sure.
All right.
Drywall ceilings can sometimes have a foot go through them.
Oh, goodness. There seems to be some other safety precautions involved in these conversations.
When you're crawling through a attic space and you're limited on movement.
I bet. Oh my gosh. Well, all good lessons, all good lessons. That makes sense. Let's see. Let's talk about cross collaboration with different roles throughout the security industry next. Looking at the bigger picture, how can manufacturers support your installations better? How do integrators support this whole system? The installers, the technicians, how does it all come together? I guess if you see it as more of a holistic approach across roles, do you guys have any suggestions on how the industry can work better together for better installations?
I think if the manufacturers pay attention and listen to the integrators, if there's issues with the design of something or if there's a feature request with the software, and that's what ICT is great at. Anything that we do that's non-conventional, that's kind of custom tailored, I can always get with Cade Thomason and the guys up there, and they'll work with us and help us um, more or less design a
Solution.
solution for the customer at that point.
Help
But that's
problem
key.
solve.
Any of our manufacturers, it's great whenever they pay attention and listen to us because I mean we're the ones out there putting it in and
Hmm.
um, testing everything, you know.
That makes sense. James, Mike, what do you look for in those relationships or any suggestions for better communication?
I like the
I'd say this.
training factor for sure. Like
Hmm.
manufacturer training, be super thorough. And I know a lot of manufacturers, I mean, including ICT, they'll build their training around the tech support calls they receive, and they'll key in on that. I know I went to training for ICT several years ago, like 2019 or so. But back then, I mean, it was it was good. The bringing in the tech support questions kind of towards the end of the training. I actually got to sit in a training with Damon. He was my
Oh,
trainer.
that's great.
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome. Because I mean, he has the firsthand experience. It's always great to be trained by somebody who actually worked on the product and worked
Yeah,
with
that
it
makes a
really
very
well,
big difference. Yeah, I
for
agree.
sure. And that's a big thing too. The trainer has to be super familiar with the product and know the product well, not just reading a book and telling you this is how
Hmm.
it should work. It's
Yeah,
more of this is how it works because I've seen it work this way.
I've been out there in the field. I did it this way. It worked. Yeah, yeah, that holds
Yeah,
a lot more value.
for sure.
There's classroom operation and there's real world operation.
Hmm.
And the real world operation, things can change in a moment, and there's a lot of custom programming that to meet a customer's needs. Then they say, I wanted it this way, but now I want it that way. And you have to be able to adapt and adjust your programming, sometimes customized programming just to meet what they want.
Hmm. That makes sense. Do you feel that this collaboration, this training, the open communication, say from the manufacturing side, actually does result in a smoother or more successful deployment of a system?
100%. Definitely does.
Makes sense. Are there any features or design approaches from manufacturers that could help make the installation more efficient or reliable? Um, Cade, you talked about customization, having that flexibility to customize. James, Mike, do you feel there's anything specific to design approaches that manufacturers can accommodate or support more for you folks out in the field?
Mm, Nothing that comes to mind. I know everything's, especially that we've done in South Texas, has probably already been done in larger markets. So where I'm at, we're always kind of late to the game with things that have already been installed other places, you know. So we usually see it kind of last-ish, if that's a word to say, summarize it.
That works. That works. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, Houston and Dallas, they always got the emerging tech that is first to market, you know, those big markets right there.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Well, different challenges, different installations. That said, is there any very specific aspect to a security system installation that is specifically difficult to manage? Is there something on the intrusion side that's more challenging, or on the access control side, or is it the introduction of something of this building automation or different technical integrations? I guess what comes to mind for you for maybe a more difficult aspect of the install?
I don't know if I'd say difficult, but like when it comes to access control, knowing the options out there, not just using
Hmm.
a cookie cutter solution. It's very frustrating when I take over a system that was done with a cookie cutter solution, but there's much more viable and much better solutions out there. Sometimes they weaken the security of the whole building with a cookie cutter solution instead of a solution that's actually meant to fit that application.
Interesting. And tell me more about that. So, are end users stuck with, say, this previous cookie cutter solution, or is it just harder to shift gears?
Sometimes they are, especially, and I'm sure that both Cade and James have seen it, with aluminum storefront doors. Somebody decides to install a strike in the mullion of the door versus, say, a electrified panic bar, and they've actually cut part of the support of that door frame.
Hmm.
So once you do that, and you're pretty much stuck with it. Um, I had a customer replace their whole storefront doors because when they bought the building, I walked up to met them. They couldn't, they were having problems with the key, and I took a screwdriver and flexed the frame to open the door up because of the way that it was done. And they decided at that point in time they were replacing the whole door.
Oh, wow. That makes sense.
So
Do
I
you
don't
think
know
it's
if Cade,
partly education? Do you think it's knowing what options and ideas are out there? I guess how would you recommend? What are the best practices to kind of avoid getting
I,
stuck in
I
that cookie
think
cutter?
I think the cookie cutter solution is people that are just looking for an easy, we only want to handle one, two products. We will adapt
Mm,
to make them work for what we need to. Um, there are so many closing solutions now compared to when I got in this industry 30 years ago. You
hmm.
were limited on the types of strikes, you were limited on everything. Now you have manufacturers with electrified hardware, many other viable solutions that are much better and will prolong the will prolong everything for future.
Hmm.
Wireless handsets are great too. Wireless lock sets, you know, electrified handles, electrified hardware, all of that is great stuff to bounce back off what Mike said.
Yeah. Do you think you have to be very proactive to be researching and engaged in all of these options in our industry through the constant evolution?
I think something I found that's actually really useful is signing up for the manufacturer newsletters. Because
Oh, sure.
whenever a new product drops, it's like, oh, cool. I know somebody that could use that. and then you use it as a sales opportunity. Like, hey, this manufacturer just released this. It would work perfect in your application of, building A to secure front door, where you used to not be able to do, put security on that door or put access control on that door.
Sure,
So
sure. That makes
definitely
sense.
those little emails of, I mean, yeah, they can be, you can get your email box blasted with them full of them, but
I know it's true. Lots of emails.
they're helpful. I like them.
That's great. Cade, what about you? Do you feel like part of your responsibilities as being a successful installer is that continuous education?
Yes, ma'am. And then as a team too, what's great is like our CTO, our COO, our sales engineer, and then anybody on the sales team or the tech side. Whenever we see a lock, we're like, dude, that lock was sweet. Like, we need to get one in. We'll bench test it, and we just keep an open eye on it. So everybody kind of looks out. And then whenever we go do things like ISC or any of our conferences we go to. And then just being in the field after you've installed things, like you walk into a building and that's the first thing you see. You
Oh,
see all the
sure.
cameras, you see if the lock was put on right or wrong or if a reader's level. And so you always just need to keep an eye on it and see what's new out there. But I think that goes with all forms of technology. And Mike knows this from the vacuum tube DVRs that we spoke about before.
Cameras.
Yeah. But if you don't stay on top of it, I mean, technology is always changing, and you just gotta kind of adapt with it or be left behind.
Yeah, fairly stated. That makes sense. Well, guys, we are coming up to time here. Kellyanne, have you seen any questions come through as of yet?
I have not so far, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to either put them in the Q&A or the chat section.
Perfect, perfect. No problem. But just to end on a note of if anybody could take something away from your installation expertise, all the years experience amongst the three of you, if there's one takeaway that you want the industry to understand about the technician or installation side in the security industry, what would that takeaway be?
I would say you have to keep an open mind and explore all solutions. It's pretty common that I see that where it's very minimized and, as I say, cookie cutter. Cookie
Mm,
cutters are great if you got the same exact building and you're doing the same exact floor plan for 10 buildings. But when you're running into this architect wants to use this equipment or doors or hardware, this architect uses different. You have
mm.
to keep an open mind and adapt and stay up on industry trends. I've
Oh, I like
seen
that.
the security industry in 30 years, the way it has evolved has just been leaps and bounds from where I first started with shunt key alarms on banks to now we can run multi-stories, elevator control. It's it's mind-boggling sometimes to look where it was 30 years ago and where it is today.
Hmm, that's great. That
I
makes
would like
sense.
to add, you know, the junior techs, the upcoming techs, pay attention to your senior guys and learn all that you can from them, and stay off the phone while you're trying to learn.
Yeah.
You know, I see
I like that.
a lot of the youth, they kind of spend a little too much time on social medias and stuff like that instead of, building their knowledge base with learning from a senior tech, somebody that's been there and has years of experience.
Yeah, I
Sure.
agree with James. Like, um, you have to be a student of the game and pay attention to
Mm,
detail. And then as long as you do that and you work hard and pay attention and then take those lessons from the guys that have been doing it forever. Because that's gold right there.
mm.
But yeah, you always got to be learning
Always.
And
and coachable.
always remember those of us that tell you don't do this because we know it doesn't work. Don't don't think you're going to reinvent the wheel because we already know it doesn't work.
Yeah, we've done it once or twice.
we've made the mistake so you can learn from our mistake. Don't
I
make it
like
again.
that. I like
Yeah.
that.
We made the mistake so you don't have to.
That's great. Well, I'm seeing some patterns here on continuously learning, being open to other opportunities and ideas. And this is just great, you guys. Thank you so much. And Kellyanne, do we have any last questions before we let
Yeah,
everybody go? Oh, we do. We have
we've
one.
got
Okay, go ahead.
we have two audience questions here. The first one is, how do you typically solve for scenarios where security devices are beyond 300 feet?
Hmm.
Okay, well, and I'll speak for ICT here. With the ICT system, you have that full adaptability. You can run remote panels. All you have to have is a network connection that will resolve that issue. Um, you can do a bus extender, mount a remote keypad, mount a remote input output, 16 channel, 8 channel, whatever, which will give you that full flexibility. Um, so it's a very viable solution. There's multifacets to that answer, unfortunately. Um, but yes, it's a very viable solution in today's world.
And most of the time, anything access control wise, I mean, you can run hundreds and hundreds of feet from, as long as you don't have power drop and things like that, um, running the locks back to a panel. But usually, where the 300 feet thing comes in is with PoE and Cat 5, Cat 6 connections. But if it's a distance thing, there's cool things like game changer cabling, and then of course fiber. So if we have a customer, they need a controller that's quarter mile away. We can run them 6 strand fiber underground and terminate it, and then just have a media converter. But there's always a solution. It's just finding what fits the customer's budget and the best option, you know.
That makes sense.
The next question is mostly asking to elaborate on the types of customization mentioned. He asks, I would like to know what type of customization you have needed to do in the field.
Anything from man traps,
Hmm.
let's see, to know some of our schools or other facilities, they want gun vaults that are tied into an access or Berg system or a panic system, so that whenever that vault is opened, it's automatically paging the sheriff's department. We leave that open to our customers because everything we do is custom tailored, and so we don't limit it to what you see is what you get. We always ask them what's the problem, and if we can't, if we don't have something here right now that we can set up for you, then we'll make it happen.
Hmm.
And that's where it comes in handy to have people like ICT and good manufacturers like that that will work alongside with you for those custom solutions.
Awesome. And one final question is for remote security installations, what do you guys use to connect back to the network?
How far remote are we talking about?
It's a good question. They do not say.
Um,
That probably would be the best thing.
And do you offer cellular router solutions?
Yes, ICT does, and I will speak to that because I have utilized those. So ICT does offer a high-speed router solution. It's all IP network based, cellular, and you can redirect that back to the GX server. So it will talk full two-way and take all customization programming.
Awesome.
That's
Awesome,
good.
guys. Thank you so much. Kellyanne, if there's any other questions, let's go ahead and make sure we follow up after this. We will be reaching out with a follow-up email, some contact information. So if anything comes front of mind, please feel free to reach out to us. Our our panel experts here are all willing to answer your questions. I just don't want to go too terribly over our time here, but I so appreciate everybody attending live. Cade, James, Mike, Kellyanne, thank you so much for hosting this alongside me. And yes, we will be in touch with more information, but thank you for attending and thank you for
Yep.
hosting, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Of
Yes,
course.
yes, thank you.
Have,
Nikki, real quick,
yeah.
Christian had commented they want to know which
Oh, sure.
manufacturer.
Oh,
So
sure.
I think maybe you guys want to reach out to her with
Oh, no problem. I
the
see you
cellular
right there.
router, the cellular router options that will integrate with
Oh,
ICT.
perfect. I see them right there. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Take
Thank you
care.
Excellent.
for
Thanks,
Thank
having
you.
us.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.